The Kansas NASCAR lineup just changed in a way that is going to dominate the pre-race conversation all weekend, and this is not rumor or speculation, it is confirmed on the official NASCAR entry list. Kyle Larson, one of the most active and fastest Cup regulars in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series rotation this season, is out of the number 88 Junior Motorsports Chevrolet at Kansas. William Byron is in. And the moment you start pulling on that thread, you find that this swap is just the beginning of a lineup reshuffling at Kansas that touches multiple cars, multiple series levels, and even the Cup garage pit box. Connor Zillisch is out of his winning ride in the number 1 JRM Chevrolet. Carson Galoupe is back in. J.J. Yeley has been replaced by Luke Baldwin at Hettinger Racing. And on the Cup side, Wood Brothers Racing is heading into Kansas without their regular crew chief. Every single one of those changes is confirmed. Every single one carries real significance. This breakdown covers all of it. Before getting into the Byron confirmation, the context around Kyle Larson's recent form has to be established, because without it, this Kansas change feels routine. With it, the swap becomes genuinely surprising. Larson has been on an exceptional run in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series in 2026, and the numbers back that up completely. At the Las Vegas O'Reilly race, Larson won outright in the number 88 Junior Motorsports Chevrolet. This was not a fortunate or circumstantial victory, it was a dominant performance from start to finish. Then at Darlington, Larson stepped in as a substitute driver for an injured Alex Bowman in that same number 88 car and finished fourth, executing a relief role cleanly in unfamiliar circumstances. That kind of adaptability in a car he had not been preparing for all week says a great deal about where his Racecraft currently stands. Then came Bristol, and this is where the Larson storyline gets genuinely compelling. In the Bristol O'Reilly race, Larson led 230 laps, looked to be in complete control of the event, and was only edged out late when Connor Zillisch surged to the win. A second-place finish, but unquestionably one of the strongest individual performances of the entire O'Reilly season. He followed that up in the Bristol Cup race by leading a race-high 284 laps, collecting strong stage points, and finishing third after Ty Gibbs won in overtime. 2 consecutive Bristol races, 2 top 3 finishes, and a combined 514 laps led across both events. That is the form Larson was carrying into the Kansas weekend, which is exactly why his absence from the number 88 entry list created an immediate reaction from fans and analysts alike. When a driver is producing results like that, the natural assumption is that he stays in the rotation. When he does not, the first question is always, what happened? The answer, confirmed by the official NASCAR Kansas entry list, is William Byron. Byron is listed as the driver of the number 88 Junior Motorsports Chevrolet for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race at Kansas this weekend. This is not a placeholder name and not an unconfirmed report. It is on the books. The immediate instinct for some fans will be to read this as a sign of tension within the Hendrick Motorsports and JRM partnership, or to frame it as Larson being pushed out of a ride he had been performing well in. That reading is incorrect. What this actually reflects is the planned rotation model that has been operating around the number 88 all season, a model in which major Hendrick Motorsports drivers cycle through the seat on a schedule that accommodates their Cup obligations and any other factors that shape their weekend availability. Larson ran Las Vegas. Larson subbed at Darlington for Bowman. Larson came back for Bristol. Now Byron gets Kansas. The car does not get weaker in this arrangement, it gets a different elite name behind the wheel, and the seat remains one of the most competitive in the entire O'Reilly garage. The Raga Kuth piece matters here too. Kuth is running the number 32 Jordan Anderson Racing Chevrolet at Kansas this weekend, which is precisely why the number 88 is open and available for Byron. That split arrangement between Kuth's primary ride and his JRM association is the mechanism that keeps the rotation moving from one weekend to the next. Reporting indicates that Kuth is expected back in the number 88 at Talladega, with additional Hendrick drivers also having planned turns in the seat later in the 2026 season. Kansas is not a one-off emergency substitution, it is one carefully placed piece of a much larger scheduling structure that has been in motion all year, even if the entry list only makes it visible one weekend at a time. Byron is not a soft replacement either. This is a frontline Hendrick Motorsports Cup driver stepping into a well-funded and well-prepared Junior Motorsports car. The number 88 remains one of the primary cars to watch at Kansas. It just has a different face in the window. Kyle Larson and William Byron are not the only major lineup story at Kansas this weekend. The driver who beat Larson at Bristol is also out of his ride, and that storyline deserves just as much attention. Connor Zillisch, fresh off winning the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race at Bristol in the number 1 Junior Motorsports Chevrolet, will not be back in that car at Kansas. Instead, Carson Galoupe returns to the number 1 entry while Zillisch shifts his focus back to his Cup responsibilities for the weekend. The guy who just won a race in that car is stepping aside one weekend later. Even when the reasoning is entirely logical from a scheduling standpoint, the optics of that transition are jarring. A winning driver, one weekend removed from victory lane, is not in the car. That is the kind of lineup move that gets attention regardless of the explanation behind it. The Galoupe storyline adds meaningful texture here. By the time Kansas arrives, Carson Galoupe will have made his 5th car or assignment change of the 2026 season, a level of movement that would challenge any driver's rhythm and consistency, let alone a young developmental driver still working to establish momentum at the National Series level. He ran the part-time number 9 at Bristol before this Kansas return to the number 1, which reinforces just how frequently his situation has shifted over the course of the year. Kansas represents an opportunity for Galoupe to climb back into strong equipment and deliver a performance that can speak for itself, but consistency has been genuinely difficult to build when the car underneath you keeps changing week to week. When you line up the Larson-Byron swap alongside the Zillisch-Galoupe swap, the picture that emerges is of an O'Reilly garage at Kansas experiencing more lineup turnover than almost any other race weekend of the entire 2026 season. And there is still more to cover. The Hettinger Racing development at Kansas deserves more attention than it is going to get simply because the JRM headlines are so dominant. J.J. Yeley will not drive the number 5 Hettinger Racing Ford at Kansas. Luke Baldwin is the confirmed replacement, making this his 2nd career O'Reilly Auto Parts Series start after his debut earlier in the season at Martinsville. This one is easy to scroll past on the entry list when you are looking at the big JRM cars, but it is a real and meaningful lineup change that carries developmental significance. Yeley has been providing the number 5 team with veteran experience and stability as Hettinger Racing works to maintain its position as the series' only fully committed non-powerhouse operation. That steadiness has actual value inside a garage where the JRM and Kyle Busch Motorsports cars set the competitive ceiling every weekend. Swapping Yeley out for a developmental driver, even temporarily, represents a genuine shift in what that team looks like on race day at Kansas. For Baldwin, though, this is opportunity that does not come around often at this level. Martinsville was his introduction to O'Reilly-level competition. Kansas is a completely different test, a big, fast intermediate track where experience matters and where the performance gaps between elite equipment and the mid-pack become most visible. How Baldwin handles that environment will provide real data points about where his National Series career could go from here. 3 separate driver changes across 3 different cars, and the Kansas lineup reshuffling is still not finished. The final confirmed change at Kansas moves from the O'Reilly garage to the Cup garage, and it is the quietest of the bunch but potentially the most consequential. Miles Stanley will not serve as crew chief for Josh Berry's number 21, Wood Brothers Ford at Kansas due to personal reasons. In his place, Matt Swiderski is confirmed as acting crew chief for the race weekend. Swiderski is not a random fill-in name being pulled from the organizational depth chart. He joined Wood Brothers in the off-season as performance engineering director after spending 5 years as a full Cup crew chief, during which time he accumulated 3 Cup victories. The experience is legitimate and documented. But there is a meaningful difference between experience level and in-race communication familiarity, and the rhythm between a crew chief and a driver takes time to build through repetition and real race conditions. Berry's season context makes this timing particularly notable. He sits 25th in the Cup standings through 8 races in 2026, which means Wood Brothers needs every competitive advantage available at Kansas rather than the added variable of adjusting to a new voice in his ear in race conditions. Even the most qualified acting crew chief creates some disruption simply by being new to that specific communication dynamic on race day. Strategy calls, pit timing, adjustment conversations, all of those things are cleaner and faster between a driver and a crew chief who have built genuine working familiarity. Swiderski has the credentials to manage the weekend competently. The question is whether Kansas becomes one of those weekends where the disruption costs the number 21 team something they cannot afford to give away. When every confirmed change at Kansas is laid out in sequence, Larson out, Byron in, Zillisch out, Galoupe in, Yeley out, Baldwin in, Stanley out, Swiderski on the pit box, Kansas quietly becomes one of the most reshuffled race weekends of the entire 2026 season. The JRM number 88 is functioning as a rotating showcase for Hendrick Motorsports stars while Kuth manages his split schedule, and that arrangement is not going away. It is going to continue producing lineup storylines at every stop on the calendar through the end of the year. The O'Reilly garage is simultaneously blending Cup veterans with developmental talent in ways that create weekly roster drama extending far beyond who posted the fastest lap in practice. And the Cup garage is getting a reminder that personnel changes on the pit box carry consequences just as real as driver changes behind the wheel. Larson's name was the entry point into all of it. The moment fans noticed he was not on the Kansas entry list, the search for answers uncovered every other piece of this story. That is how the best NASCAR garage stories work in 2026. One absence leads you to the whole picture, and the whole picture is always more complicated and more interesting than the headline that started it. Now you have the full breakdown before Kansas weekend gets underway. If this breakdown gave you the full picture you were looking for, hit the like button and subscribe to NASCAR Central. Every confirmed lineup move, every garage development, and every race weekend breakdown in 2026 gets covered here before anywhere else. Drop a comment below with your take. Should Larson have stayed in the number 88 at Kansas, or is Byron the right call for this weekend? The comment section is open, let's hear it.